But first, when Henry II made Thomas Becket Archbishop of Canterbury, the King of England thought he was getting a safe sort of yes man. No doubt Gough Whitlam thought the same when he made Sir John Kerr his Governor-General. You'll never know, though, how appointments are going to turn out, do you? And there's no doubt the Albanese government thought it was appointing one of its own when it yesterday announced Chris Barrett as the new head of the Productivity Commission. And that's because Barrett is a former Wayne Swan Chief of Staff, a former Labor appointed ambassador to the OECD, a former advisor to King Beazley even, and most recently a Deputy Secretary in the heavily politicised Victorian Public Service. So much so that there's currently an investigation on foot by the state's Ombudsman into just how politicised the Victorian Public Service has become under Daniel Andrews. As insiders reportedly told the Australian newspaper yesterday, Barrett is, quote, Labor through and through. Now, perhaps Barrett will turn out to be his own man, like Becket and Kerr. We can only hope. But pretty obviously, Labor expects the Productivity Commission under new management to be a very different beast to the one that routinely called for greater labour market flexibility and decried industry subsidies. And that's the key to this government, isn't it? Anthony Albanese got elected promising to be safe change, yet his government has been anything but. There's the back to the 1970s union empowerment. There's the voice. And then if he gets a second term, there's the coming referendum on a republic. We already know from the minister's speech last week that this government has pushed the button on new climate-driven sectoral plans to give transport, housing and agriculture the same emissions upheaval that's already being inflicted on energy. There's the abolition of the Building and Construction Commission, a payoff for the millions the union spent getting Labor elected, and the new replacement body made up 50-50 of union and business leaders, even though unions, well, they're less than 10% of the private sector workforce. So it's not 90-10, as it is in the real world, it's 50-50, because that's how Labor sees its relationship with unions. Then there's the coming shake-up of the Reserve Bank. And of course, this attempt via the Barrett appointment to make the Productivity Commission more sympathetic to big government and big unions, rather than drive the productivity we need to lower inflation and boost growth. But that's the Labor Party for you. Say what you like about how they govern, but they certainly don't waste their time in power. Unlike the coalition, Labor gets in and moves fast to try and remake institutions in the left's image and to change the culture wherever it can to reflect Labor values and Labor priorities. Now, that's regardless of what you get told before an election, meaning the longer this government lasts, the more changed our country will be. The Prime Minister doesn't want to admit it, but if his voice gets up, there'll be treaties with Indigenous groups and billions in taxpayer compensation, and the rewriting of our history, the end of Australia Day, the scrapping of the current national flag, and much more. If the government gets a second term, there'll be a new push to make us a republic. And as always, more regulation, more spending, and more government in our lives. Because that's what defines Labor. There's no problem that can't be improved, they think, by ever bigger government. Now, maybe, just maybe, against the expectations of his former mates who appointed him, the new Productivity Commission head might prove committed to the low tax, less regulation, reduced subsidy regime that's been the Commission's hallmark in the past. Again, you never know how people will turn out until they get to call the shots. But don't hold your breath.